Welcome to GenX Journeys, the podcast that's all about rediscovering, reinventing, and thriving. I'm your host, Paul Stressner, and if you're part of Generation X, the show's for you. We dive into real stories of resilience, reinvention, and personal growth, all while celebrating the past and charging full speed into the future. Whether it's nostalgia-fueled throwbacks, inspiring conversations, or motivation to help you level up, GenX Journeys is here to remind you your best days are not behind you. They're happening right now, and you're just getting started. So let's get into it. All right. Hey, everybody. It's Paul Stressner, GenX Journeys. And as usual, I'll start off with something that I'm grateful for. And today, I'll say that I'm grateful for the first step that I took back in 2010 when I launched Return to the 80s, my blog. And I had no idea what I was doing. I knew I wanted to get into writing after being a computer programmer. Well, at that point, it was only 14 years before. I'm still at that job, but it gave me the love of writing, and I had no idea where it would lead me to. And then I ended up going into podcasting, and now there's videos, and all the social media blew up since then. So it's stuff that I didn't see coming when I took that first step. It just reminded me of, I just posted a quote yesterday. It's, you don't have to have it all figured out to take that next step. And that was me. I just living proof of that you don't have to have it all figured out. You just take that first step. If you have anything that you've been wanting to do, just start. So, yeah, so I'm very grateful that I started my Return to the 80s blog. And that also made me think of that because on today's show, we're joined by Will Padilla, host of the podcast 1980s Now. And it's a weekly show that digs into the music, movies, and cultural moments of the decade that helped shape us and explores why the 80s still influence us so much today. And Will also has a rich background in the arts, from composing for off-Broadway and recreating immersive audio for Macbeth to writing and performing comedy in New York. And he's the author with his new book, Totally Bogus But True, Tales of the 1980s, plus a coming-of-age novel is on the way. So, Will, welcome to GenX Journeys. Great to have you here.
Thanks so much, Paul. It's my pleasure. Yeah, and just in hearing if I could share something I'm grateful for, because you've
Sure.
inspired me. You mentioned I just published a book, and I just finished another one. Gosh, it's taken me this fictional book that I wrote, this coming of age book, took me. I'm trying to be honest, because sometimes I catch myself trying to make it sound like I did it faster. You used to be making it longer, now it's shorter. I want to say I started it in 2007, so 18 years ago. And that journey of learning how to write was so hard. And not only because you have to develop a craft of actually writing, I think equally as difficult was the psychological game that you have to learn how to master as well, because it's such a solitary endeavor. And it's only in the last, I want to say, few months, last few weeks, and this is what I'm grateful for, is feeling like I've finally not mastered the game, but sort of gotten to a place where it's not intimidating. It doesn't make me feel sick, that I can just edit and write and not, sort of get bogged down by all the sort of, again, the weight that you can sort of put on yourself of just the task of writing. And I finally feel like I'm out from under that. Look, I say that and I'll start writing something else, in a couple of months or next year, and it'll just, I feel like that all over again. But right now, I feel like I'm grateful for feeling like I can do it with a clear head and not feeling anxious, and just do the work.
Yeah, I love that so much. Especially, I could totally relate. Not only because I'm writing a memoir series right now, Journey of the Roadrunner. I'm running a race in all 50 states, and so I'm going to cover 10 states in each book, and I've done 13 so far. So I have enough for the first book. So I'm almost on my first draft of that. But not only that, but the way you described the writing process, it's the same with running, and I just
Hmm.
finished my first marathon, and that's also like a solitary thing that really gets in your head. Oh, especially the marathon. I'll get more on that at another episode, but yeah, I really got in my head with that. And I just, as I'm writing and doing this running journey, there are a lot of parallels with that. And there are running groups out there, and then and just as there are running groups, there's also writing groups. So I belong to a group in Rhode Island called Lit Arts RI, and there's a bunch of us that write together on Saturdays and say what we're working on. So that helps too, really motivating. So yeah, so I could totally
Well,
relate to what you said.
yeah, what a great metaphor. I'm sure folks have
Hmm.
you probably know better than I do, have used that marathon and running as a metaphor before, but you're right. It's so obvious now that you say it that way because I know when I started writing, it felt I was too much focused on finishing the race. And
Hmm.
I've never run a marathon before. The closest I came was doing a 5K. And the way I got through it, because I hadn't run a lot prior to that, I did it to help support a friend who was just getting through a battle with cancer, was by not focusing on the ending. Because to do that would have, again, like we're talking about, it would have been so overwhelming. It would have been tempting to just stop. Like, how am I possibly going to do another mile? Are you kidding me? But instead, you just sort of stay in the moment and just literally do one step at a time. And
Yep.
then before you know it, or before I knew it, I could see the finish line. And it was like, okay, I can do another 200 yards or whatever. And wow, yeah, that's great. That is exactly my experience writing. So I can see how with you, the one would sort of feed into the other and help you get through that emotional journey of it as well.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Yeah, and that training sure helped me get through that. And just like you said, that you got that down pat, and then you're ready to go on to another project. It's the same thing with the running. I finished that race, but now to figure out when I want to do my next one now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah. And the
uh,
repetition of doing one, doing 50 and having done 13 already for your book. It's great because it's almost like writing not writing a novel necessarily, writing a book 13 times, but obviously like anything else, the more you do something beginning to end, the easier it is the next time.
hmm. Yeah, you build on it, right? Hmm. Yeah, so you want to give us a little bit of background? You sound like quite the Renaissance man there. You've
Oh,
done quite a bit,
hmm.
and that yeah, what led to you eventually to the podcasting. But yeah, so you grow up in New York,
I grew up in Jersey City, New
Jersey
Jersey,
City.
which is
Okay.
it's just on the other side of the Hudson River from Manhattan. Literally, and I feel very fortunate, but I don't know, until I was 8 or 9 years old, I lived literally on the Hudson River across from a dock that, if I were facing in one direction, the Statue of Liberty was right there in the water, and if I turned to my left there was the World Trade Center right across the water. Uh, and for look, I lived in a city, I didn't know anything else, but it felt like a very magical place, and, being able to visit New York and see shows and, growing up with a father who was not into sports, he was an artist himself, at least that's what he wanted to do, and then life took a different direction for him, but, he loves plays and musicals and music and all those things, so I couldn't help but also be enthralled with, the arts, I think, from a very young age.
Yeah, actually, my dad was born and raised in Brooklyn, and his
Okay.
oldest brother ended up living in Hoboken. So I used to go every year, the day after Thanksgiving. I would go and stay in Hoboken for the weekend. So that's right nearby, and I've seen that view and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our sister city, Hoboken. Yeah,
Hmm.
right. Oh, another great town. Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely, right there on the water there, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's just so easy to get around. I love it there. I love going to New York every chance I can get. So
Mhm.
that's a great area. It's being able to see these shows. You felt drawn to
Yeah,
look for a career in this. Is that how
yeah,
you?
yeah. You find at some point when you're old enough, I suppose, you start psychoanalyzing yourself, but I'm sure just like you hear many creative people, it was part of it was, like I mentioned, my dad, who I, looked up to as my hero. He loved these things, so I wanted to be involved in these things, but probably even beyond that, it was without realizing it, a way that if I could do that, I could have another level of attention from him, a different maybe he would start admiring me or loving me in a way that, he hadn't seen me yet. I'm sure that was a big part of it. And I think you hear a lot of artists talk about sort of having a hole you need to fill with applause or, sort of recognition in some way. That's definitely has to be a part of it. But yeah, so from a young age, I think, being a little showy and, doing little performances at the house and playing the piano and stuff like that was all part of trying to get approval or attention from my parents.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And You grew up in the 70s and 80s, I'm assuming?
Yep, I was born at the very
Yes.
beginning of the 1970s or 1971. Yeah.
Yep, yep. It's a that was quite a different place.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
changed just a bit since then, but
Yeah. Yeah, and talking about New York, I mean, it was it's a little scary to go to New York at that time, especially Times Square, which has been, taken over by Disney and, these magnificent Broadway productions we have now. But yeah, then you're walking past adult theaters and a lot of homeless, a lot of it seemed like a lot drug deals going down as you're navigating. It wasn't the tourist trap it is now,
Mhm,
but it was a great time to grow up as a kid.
mhm. Yep, yep. Yeah, it actually it made for good movies too, like The
It,
Warriors comes to mind right away.
right? Yes, you're right. It was the setting for a lot of great movies. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, and so yeah, moving forward, yeah, we can talk about like your podcast because I love it so much, and I love that not only do you talk about the '80s, but what I used to do when I first started returning the '80s podcast was we would talk about what news was happening now today
Mm.
that related to our '80s pop culture. So I love that you do that. So what got you into that? What got you into the
Yeah.
podcasting for?
Yeah. So I'll try to make this. It's an interview show, so I was going to say I'll make this really short, but taking a step back, I guess, and talking about starting out, in New York and wanting to be in theater, originally theater. I want to mostly want to theater, but I also wrote music and I also wrote, but I wanted to be an actor. But I had the opportunity, so I studied acting in college. I studied composing, and when I graduated, I did get acting gigs in New Jersey and in New York, pretty quickly after that. And for years, I worked in theater there in New York. Um, Doing that, and I transitioned to writing, music because, this is sort of tangential, but gosh, talking about being a writer, at some point you wanna get this published, you're gonna reach out to agents and publishers, and you're gonna get a lot of no's. Being in my 50s now, I know how to handle that. It don't take it personally, but being in your 20s and going on auditions and, people rejecting you, I took a lot of that personally.
I was
It's
gonna
hard
say,
because I'm not handsome enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not, gosh, it's hard not to. But at some point, I couldn't do it anymore. So I started writing music, which I gratefully had studied how to do that as well. And they don't care what you look like. Maybe they don't like your music, but for some reason that hit me differently. If they were like, "Well, this isn't for us," it's like, okay, it's just not your type of music. It's not that I'm, whatever, not talented. I don't know. For some reason, when you put your physical body in front of people and they say next, you can't help but take it personally. But I wrote music then for a few years after that, and then 9/11 happened, and I was married to a person at the time who also worked in theater, and we were like, "We gotta get the hell out of here. I've lived here my whole life, and suddenly it's like a police state." It was very scary, and I never imagined it would go back to normal. I was too naive, probably too young to know, that sort of life finds a way and stuff sort of, seeks its own level, sort of. So I moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and I thought, "Well, I have to make peace with this. I'm not doing artsy stuff anymore. That's it. I'm gonna just dive into a different, work that could pay money and that sort of thing." And that's what sort of lay dormant. My creative sort of energy lay dormant for like 20 years or something. And I couldn't take it anymore. I think it's Brene Brown that says, suppressed, I think creative energy is not benign. You're gonna feel it somewhere, and it's not gonna be good, and I couldn't, and that started happening to me just, I guess it's now 7 or 8 years ago, and I started probably more like 10 years ago, I started finding ways to try to be creative while maintaining a job that paid the mortgage. Eventually it became podcasting because why not? It was available. What really happened was what really happened was I looked for podcasts to listen to, and I thought when I first learned about podcasts, I thought there's gotta be somebody talking about the '80s, and believe it or not, Paul, 8 years ago, there weren't that many '80s podcasts or Gen
no.
X podcasts.
Mhm.
And there were none that I really connected with. So I thought, well, heck, I'll just start my own. And to distinguish myself from the other folks, because, there's lots of folks who talk about it from different angles. And a lot of them talk about, let's look back at a movie or a song or something like that. I thought these guys have that handled. Let's talk about, like you're saying, let's talk about something contemporary that's still, connected to the era that we grew up in. And not that many people do that. You know, it was you and me. I think that was it. And so that was our way in. And now, you know, I've been doing it for this is our 7th year doing it.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it's so funny that our lives are actually pretty parallel because that's the same thing as me. I started writing short stories when I was 10 years old, and and then I just fell away from it. I
Mm.
went in the Navy. When I came out, I went to school and got a degree in business management, and then I got into computers because I figured that's where the money was. So I kind of lost my way for writing. But like you just said, that it was still, it's kind of like a pilot light lit it still in me. Just and then it just lit up when I started blogging, and yeah, then the rest is history. Then I got into the podcast and still love the writing. So yeah, it's very similar to you. Yeah.
I don't know if you felt this way, but I mean, I felt sick. You know, when I
Hmm.
wasn't doing anything creative, it felt sick, like I was going against nature in some way. Not to say that, and maybe there is a, you know, to us, there's some aspect of something you're, you know, direction you're supposed to move in your life, or something you're intended to do. May sounds too, you know, deterministic or fatalist, but you feel like, gosh, I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be doing that. And if you're not doing it, yeah, I felt sick almost every day about it
Hmm.
until I started finding ways to start exercising that creative energy again. Goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm happy for
Yeah.
you as I am for myself for finding our way back.
Yeah. I ignored the hints and everything. When I was in the Navy, I would write letters home, and I was in my glory doing the writing. And then when I went to school for computers, my favorite classes where everybody hated humanities, but I loved it. It's like English and history, if people don't know that. And then my favorite class was Mark Twain honors course. So I'm going to school for getting a degree in computers, and my English and history were all my favorite subjects that I was drawn to, but I still kept pushing against that. And
I
I
would
don't know.
imagine that even in your structure of learning computer languages, that may help you organize how you write something. I mean,
Mm,
some folks plan, some people just sort of wing it when they write, but I would imagine there's a, you know, it's like you can't keep, you know, your creative mind out of that either. You know, sort of maybe reinforced each other.
mhm. I don't know. I just feel like the way, well, at least where I grew up, you were expected to, go to school, go to college, get a good job, have a family, and so you were doing all these things that you were like trained to do what you thought you were supposed to do instead of listening to yourself.
Yeah.
And so I feel like a lot of us Gen Xers are coming into that stage where we're coming back to ourselves.
Yeah, you know, you remind me. You're right. My parents, you know, when I was looking for a college to go to, because I was told I had to go to college. And now my parents, I don't think my mother had graduated college yet. She graduated college, I think, the year I graduated from college. You know, because they had me like most parents of Gen Xers. They had me very young. You know, my dad had
Hmm.
just come out of Vietnam, fighting in the more,
Same.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and my mom was 19 when I was born. So when by the time I was heading towards college, it was that idea that we want you to be better than we were, you know, and have more than we have. So you have to, this is what they told me. You got to go to school, like you said, and you got to get a good job. Now you say, well, what school, what job? I don't know. You do that. Okay, well, mom, I was thinking I want to be a writer. Not that. You're not going to make any money doing that. An actor.
Hmm.
No, you have to get a real job, a good job. Yeah, you're right, and that's, you know, I was able to sort of finagle going to college for one thing and then studying, like you're saying, taking classes of the stuff I really liked and then doing that, you know, after I got out of school. But yeah, you're right. A lot of Gen Xers are probably get put on that path, and only when you get old enough and have maybe the financial flexibility to be able to say, "I'm gonna find some hobbies or something that I could do a little more often that feed my soul." Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, we kind of get stuck in that rut, and yeah, a lot of us, you just feel that pull to get out of there. And a lot of us, like you and I, we find our way, but then there's other people that stay stuck. And so that this part of the point of doing this podcast, how I transition to this, is to show people that you can go after your dreams and bring them
I
back
know
to life.
I know very few people. I could think of maybe 2 that are doing the thing that they seem intended to do. Like, they're really happy, they do it 9 to 5, you know, and they're fulfilled, and they're really good at it. You're right. Very few people.
Love this. And then when, and I haven't listened to it and watched it yet, but it sounds like you had a big breakthrough with the podcast when you had Nina Blackwood on. Did you want to talk about that? How
Yeah,
did that
yeah, I
happen?
suppose so. Well, how did it happen? Gosh, I don't know. In a sense, why did she say yes? I don't know. Yeah, going back 7 or 8 years, well, 7 years, I guess. When I started it, I approached it sort of, I tried to be very have a path, I suppose, you're talking like the fact that you're good at computers and creative writing shows that we can have this balance of left brain and right brain thinking, and I feel like I have that too, where I'll take a creative endeavor and follow methodical sort of steps or goals. And I know if I started the podcast that I wasn't going to get any big celebrities right away, and that was the goal. So I had to start smaller. So I talked to local people that were had some kind of connection to the '80s or something, and I spoke to a lot of great people. Like, let's talk about the Ghostbusters. All right, I'm going to talk to Greg Ficetic. Ficetic. I'm probably getting his name wrong. I have his book over here. That is actually a guy who helps people deal with ghosts, and Brendan Masulo, who has a whole theory about what ghosts really are. So folks like that nobody knows, but they're local, and and slowly move my way up. And yeah, Nina Blackwood from one of the first VJs on MTV. Um, I reached out to her, and for some reason she said yes. And quite honestly, even thinking back 7 years, I'm shocked that I was brave enough to ask. Now it's come sort of second nature to do that sort of thing. But she was one of a handful of people that I thought I'd love to chat with her. She was actually from Cleveland, so she's from the
Okay.
area. And so maybe there's a connection I could play, this angle. And yeah, it worked. In fact, we talked about her, her time here. Uh, and yeah, leveraging that allowed me to it seemed to get more, listeners grew. When you start these things out, folks don't realize to be a successful podcast, you don't need thousands of people. You have hundreds of listeners. You're like in the top 5 or 10% of all podcasts because there's literally like a billion podcasts, and most of them nobody finds.
Yep.
Unfortunately, because there's a lot of good ones out there that have to fight through this noise. But yeah, so when I say our numbers increased exponentially, we're talking from dozens to maybe now several dozens, and then ultimately from there, I was able to get other bigger celebrities, and then it really grew from there. But it all started with her, and I was eternally great. Still, I was just talking about this the other day with somebody. So grateful that she was willing to do that when I was nobody know who I was.
Yeah. I actually just had a similar experience this year. We had Diane Franklin on earlier
Oh, I
in the
love
year,
Diane.
January. Yeah. Have
Yeah,
you met her yet? Yeah.
I've had her on the show at least 2 times, maybe
Huh.
3.
Yeah.
I've never
Yeah.
met
She's
her in
awesome.
person, which is sad, but, yeah, I did interview her twice in connection with her book came out. When her book came
Yep.
out, we did it. Before her book came out, I talked to her, and then she was really kind at the last minute. I was doing monthly trivia on Facebook, and I said, "Hey, you wanna come on here and do like I'll give you the questions. They're all gonna be about movies you've been in. You're gonna be like a surprise guest and ask the questions, and we'll, give away your book or something." And she did that too, and it was kind of a last minute thing, and yeah, I love her. She's fantastic. That's so cool that
Yeah.
got to talk to her.
She's great. Yeah, love her. And yeah, and she was just at an event. Oh no, I forgot the name of the event. I think it was somewhere in Mexico. It was an '80s thing, and
Oh, the Cancun thing,
yeah,
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 right.
yeah, yeah. She was trying to talk us into going to that. I wish I could have went. And then
Oh
there
my
was a
gosh, yeah.
little Better Off Dead reunion there happening with John
Yeah,
Cusack and everything. Yeah.
yeah,
uh,
I'd love to meet her. Yeah, I'm grateful for the technology we have, allows us to talk with a lot more people than we could otherwise, but it is weird meeting people this way that you may never meet in person. It's kind of bizarre, but she's definitely somebody I'd love to be able to, meet in person.
mhm. Are there any other guests that you love
Yeah.
that really blew you away? That
Yeah, I always Cassandra Peterson, better known as Elvira. I love Elvira, I got the gimmick, I was really into it, when seeing her, introduce movies and seeing her movie back in the 1980s. So I was expecting it, I didn't know what we were gonna how it was gonna go, but she had a book that came out, and I read her book, and it's a biography, and wow, she has lived a life. And at a young age, it wasn't easy for her. She had some challenges, with her family. She had a tragedy where she was actually burned with like, scalding water as a very young. I want to say 4. a pot on the stove that burned her, scarred her skin, that caused her then emotional issues because she was dealing with like, what, how does she feel about herself looking this way? Anyway, I learned so much about it's having adventures with Elvis Presley and
Right.
Jimi Hendrix. I mean, crazy stuff that made me really, my wife says when I say this, I sound creepy, fall in love with her, like at reading this book because it's so intimate. And you feel like, wow, she is such an amazing person. She's more than this, this icon that she's created. And getting to chat with her, I was not disappointed. She was this person that I had connected with, I felt like in this book. And not so much, we did a live interview on Facebook, so take questions from the audience, but we also chatted before and after, and oh my gosh, she was so humble and she was nervous about how she came off, and she wanted to be, make sure she did it correctly, and just a genuine person. So yeah, I was really smitten. I remain smitten with her. She's another person I'd love to meet in person, and I'm hoping that in the next couple of weeks I'm gonna have an opportunity. There's going to be a convention not too far from me.
Oh, awesome. Oh, yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I've noticed that too. Any celebrities we've had on I haven't been disappointed yet. That they've all been great. So I know a lot of celebrities get bad reputations, but I know everybody
Mhm.
that we've had on, and sounds like who you've had on too, that they're
Yeah, I
really good.
agree.
Yeah.
No duds. I had a chance to talk to somebody once, who I won't say. Well, I'm glad I didn't because he turns out he really is a jerk in real life. And I really wanted to talk to him at first, but the circumstances that led to him not being on the show taught me something about him. And I was like, I'm glad you're not going to be on the show. And then finally he came back and said, I'll be on the show. I was like, I'm good. And yeah, and so I avoided talking to the only person who I probably would have been disappointed in talking to because they're a nice person anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And I love the chemistry with should also mention that you have John and Kat on as your co-hosts. Yeah, I love the chemistry between all of you. So how did you all meet? Did you have to grow up together, or you just met each other
Yeah.
later?
I got lucky with those two. Kat, it turns out I went to college with. Not turns out, I did. That's how I know Kat. But we weren't super close at all in college. We knew about each other and had some interactions, not a whole lot. And then I didn't talk to her for, I don't know, 30 years. And we happened to be on a COVID time, like Zoom, where folks from the theater department, because I studied theater in college, we're all getting on, and she was there. And so we wound up talking as a result of that. And so when I was looking to expand the hosts and mix things up, and I thought it would be great to have a woman on because I have another perspective. I didn't know who that would be, but she and I had such a easy rapport after 30 years, of talking about things. And so I asked her to be on, and that's how that came to be. And now we're great friends, much closer than we were in college. And John, my other co-host, is a very successful podcaster and YouTuber in his own right, manyfold more than I am. At the time we started, we was a little. I want to say it's a little more neck and neck, although it still wasn't. And a couple of years ago, talking about GenX Journeys, he was laid off from his computer job of 25 years, I think it was, and he said, "Well, heck, I've always wanted to do this, and now I'm in my 50s. I'm going to devote all of my time to trying to be a successful presenter." And sure enough, I mean, now he's got, easily over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, promotional deals with, retro video game companies and all this sort of thing. So I'm lucky to have him, but he and I met because he had me as a guest on his show and we kept in touch. And when I was thinking and he's another guy I just hit it off with, and I thought, yeesh, maybe John needs an outlet where he just gets to goof around and someone else is the host. And yeah, that's exactly sort of how it worked. I said, you could show up. You don't have to do any research. You're a smart guy. You're filled with opinions. That's all you got to do. I'm going to tell you a news story. You tell me what you think about it, whatever comes to mind, and we'll take it from there. And so that's how we met. And yeah, I'm very lucky. They wouldn't be on the show if we didn't have good chemistry, but I'm lucky that I know people that I have that rapport with and that they're great, to talk to on the show, because as not everybody can do this. It can be intimidating getting in front of a microphone and pressing record.
Yeah, I've had that happen before. There would be somebody that they seem outgoing and everything online. Then you have them on the show, and it's like pulling teeth trying to get them to talk.
Yes.
But yeah, you guys are all you're all funny and everything too.
Yeah,
Hilarious.
just
I
like
love it.
anything
Yeah.
else, I think, and I'm sure this is look. You're talking about how you made the move back to creative writing because it's something you love,
Hmm.
and I think any endeavor, including this podcast, it has to first be for yourself. It has to be because you find joy in it, and I love hanging out with those two guys. And quite honestly, if nobody listened, we would probably just hang out. We don't live in the same town, so we'd still do it virtually, but we probably wouldn't record it. but but yeah, it's just a joy to be with those two.
Hmm. Now, about your book, what made you decide to tackle that
Yeah.
topic with the totally bogus but true tales?
I want to be perfectly honest with you, Paul, because I'm generally just an honest guy. And also because you're writing your own stuff right now, I'll share this with you. I've been working on, I told you, this novel, which is set in the 1980s and is based on some real things that happened in the 80s, uh, including some terrible stuff that happened in the 1980s. Uh, but I think it seems like a timely book because a lot of it's, is dealing with immigrants, folks who migrated to Jersey City. Jersey City happens to be, I don't know where it stands now, but it was at the time, certainly. There were two cities in New Jersey that had the largest population of immigrants from India in it. It's probably still true today. Cleveland's probably got to probably maybe give it a run for its money. But anyway, I digress. But I spent a lot of time researching and writing that book, and I still didn't have it to a point where I knew what I was going to do. Was I going to self-publish? Am I going to find an agent? I don't know about this process. I don't know it. So I thought, as an exercise, let me write a nonfiction book that'll be a lot shorter. And because it's nonfiction, I'll be able to learn more about that process. And because I do it every week, with the podcast, it's got to be about the 1980s. And so I took a number of the stories that I had already researched for the show and talked about on the show and turned them into the book. Um, so partly to be able to have these stories out there for folks like us who grew up. There's a new generation of folks who didn't grow up with Ripley's Believe It or Not and the Time Life book series. There's a lot of outlets like that now, but there was something for me to go to a library and get a book about weird stories that I really, as a young kid, or a teen, was really exciting to me to be able to do just sit by myself. My parents didn't even know what I was reading about. I'm learning about all this weird stuff. So I wanted to be able to put together a book like that. That's one reason. But the other, like I said, it was an exercise in being able to learn about publishing and self-publishing uh, and hopefully gain some audience or traction or at least knowledge or experience in what is it going to be like to market a book. Because even if am lucky enough to get an agent with my novel, you may know this already in your experience, publishers and agents, they want to take on people who are going to market the book themselves. What do they do? I don't know, because right now when you query them, one of the questions they ask you is like, "What's your social media reach?" It's like because they want you to do the heavy lifting in that regard. They'll put it in the book, they'll print it, but you're gonna have to sell it essentially. So I wanted to get these stories out there. It's a collection of about a dozen weird but true stories. Some are supernatural, some are pop culture related. All of them are, I think, too strange to be believed, in one regard or another. But at the same time, like I'm saying, hopefully I'll be able to leverage it to get my novel out, which I think would be great to have in the hands of folks too.
Yep, that's great. Yep, have your audience, and I love the stories because it's not like all the stories that they're not something that everybody knows about. So yeah, I think everybody's going to learn a little something about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I knew a single one of these till I started digging into them. As I skim through it here, I've got it in my hand.
Yeah, the I think the only one that I think I might have heard of was the one with the Garfield phones. That sounded
Okay.
familiar,
Yeah.
but I didn't know the details. But I just felt like, and I didn't realize the controversy with the Cabbage Patch Kids too. So
Yeah, no,
that
yeah.
was an interesting one.
Yeah, I think the one I guess I sort of knew about was the one that's called the Montauk Project, because now we know that it inspired Stranger Things and the Duffer Brothers who created it. But in the 1980s, we had the Philadelphia Experiment movie because of this story. The Montauk Project, it's or it's connected to that story, the Philadelphia Experiment.
Right.
So I guess in a sense I knew a little bit about that one, but not as much as I learned researching these things.
Yeah, and you mentioned Stranger Things. We can hop back to 80s stuff that's happening now. I feel like since Cobra Kai came out, we've been getting a lot of great 80s movies, television shows that I don't know. It seemed like before that it was just all cheesy and like the think Red Dawn flopped, and there were several other off the top of my head I can't remember. But then it seems like ever since Cobra Kai, like, we've had the Top Gun and Stranger Things. So yeah, I'm loving this resurgence of '80s culture.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a couple of things happen, including the fact that folks our age are more in positions of power to be able
To do this.
to do the right projects and have these stories harkening back to the things they grew up with, because they're also Gen Xers. Where Gen X seems like it's otherwise like, where are they? Where are they in positions of power in the government or in the world? You hardly see these folks.
Yep.
And I don't think it partly, I've heard somebody they said to me once, I think it's because we're the generation of whatever. We really don't care. We don't want to really be involved. But you and I are two guys who are talking about how we have a passion to be able to create and put stuff out there in the world. So that can't be entirely true. And in these, movie studios and TV studios, we've got these folks greenlighting these great shows. And I think you give a great example, Cobra Kai in particular, where they figured out how, instead of like Red Dawn, where we're just going to reboot something, they figured out how to take whatever existed and just let's tell the story that happens after that. Let's continue it. What would naturally have happened to Johnny Lawrence now that he's a grown up? I love it. And I love the take on it that he's this sort of, hardened guy who's sort of down and out. You wouldn't think of that necessarily. Um, but yeah, I think they've sort of, like you're saying, they kind of cracked the code. And more shows that we see like that uh, extend what we have instead of just trying to rehash it, are
Right.
more interesting and more successful as a result.
Yeah, especially Cobra Kai, they seem to do an incredible job of, you know, doing it for us with our characters that we're familiar with, but then also introduce the new characters for for the next generation, and the connection between the two generations was, they did it perfectly. I felt like that's why it was such a success. So
I agree. Yeah, and
yeah,
that team of producers that put that show together, are looking to do some more with some other '80s properties. And normally I'd be like, why you got to do that? But I don't know. I trust them based on like exactly what you're saying. They seemed how to figure it out.
right. Yes, because actually when I first started blogging, that was a big thing. Anytime there was going to be a reboot, there'll be all kinds of outrage and everything. And as a matter of fact, early on, but maybe 2011 or 2012, for April Fool's Day, I announced that there's a Breakfast Club reboot, and I casted the cast, and people legitimately got angry at me because they
Yeah,
thought it was real.
yeah. It is
So
kind of it is
yeah,
interesting though, right? I kind of get it and also don't get it. This idea that if you make something that's a remake of my old thing, somehow my old thing is affected. Like it doesn't change the copy of Breakfast Club I have.
right,
So I'm not sure why we care so much. I just don't see it. There's some movies that come out like that, just don't see them. Like that's not my Red Dawn. I got my Red
right,
Dawn. I'm good.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, some people get
Yeah,
furious. You're right. Yeah, if you want to get some, rage bait or whatever they call that, yeah, just do that. Some people, that's their
so
whole thing. That's their whole thing on
right,
Facebook. Yeah.
yeah, it's hilarious. Right, if you don't like it, don't bother with it. And even in the '80s, we did remakes of other movies from the '60s and '50s and
Oh yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah. The Thing is probably the best example of that.
Hmm.
Remaking a movie from the 1950s.
Right.
And boy, oh boy, is it much better than the original. That doesn't always happen, but yeah, in the 1980s it happens though. Yeah.
Let's see. I had some notes here, and now I need my glasses.
This happens to me too. And when I do my show, I have it like printed out, and then I get rid of the pages as I'm done, and I don't need them anymore. So many times I throw a page, I'm like, "Ah, you know what? There was something on that I needed. Now I gotta go dig it out of the garbage."
Oh, actually, I'm gonna improv because I just thought of something about your podcast. Are there any guests that you any dream guests that you have that you like to have on that you're reaching out to
Yeah,
or anything?
probably several, but there's some hip hop artists in particular I'd love to chat with. DMC. I'd love to chat with DMC. He was nearly on the show once, or at least I was told he was going to be on the show, and then that didn't happen. Um, he's probably the biggest one that comes to mind now. I've kind of moved a little bit away from chasing after celebrities, but there are some. And actually, in next year, I'm thinking about getting back to doing some more interviews because it's I definitely love chatting with those folks. And my goal is usually to my hope originally was, and again, going back 7 years, I don't recall a lot of these folks getting any attention. You mentioned talking to Diane Franklin. uh, I don't know that you could go before, just a few years ago, and you'd see a whole lot of, if any, interviews with Diane Franklin. And she's the kind of performer, and there's tons of them that you'd see her and say, "Oh my goodness, maybe you don't even know her name. I love her in Last American Virgin. You won't love her in Last American Virgin. She did us all dirty, Last American Virgin. You see her in these movies, Better Off Dead. I love her in Better Off Dead. I recognize her. And I thought it would be great to give an outlet, a voice to have at least somewhere documented these stories that I don't know that were otherwise getting captured. Now, again, there's a whole lot of outlets for these things, so I tend to not. It doesn't come front of mind to go after some folks, but I think next year I'm going to start doing that again. But DMC is someone who I'm going to try to chase down again, see if I can't talk into coming, because I'm such a big fan. Run DMC was one of my early loves as far as hip hop goes. And my buddy of mine in elementary school would memorize every lyric, and we never did it for anybody, but we would do the back and forth ourselves, in my basement in front of a mirror, having a Run DMC record on the turntable there. So he's the one that I would love to chat with.
Did you break dance?
Oh my gosh, yes,
Yeah.
of course. Now let's see, where were you living at that time? Were you in a place where breakdancing was happening?
Yeah, I'm in Rhode Island. I grew up in Rhode Island
Oh, you
too.
okay?
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I had my cardboard, I had parachute
Yeah.
pants, I had that all going on there.
Yeah, in fact, my novel that I was mentioning to you, a lot of it, they say bite what you know. A lot of it comes from actual, knowledge or experience or stories of being in Jersey City and roaming around looking for people to battle. This is what you did in the 1980s. Yeah, you learned how to break among your friends. Maybe you'd steal some moves from somebody you saw or you'd see on TV or movies when they started coming out, like Breakin' and Beat Street. And then you'd walk around the city listening for radios, trying to find people to battle.
Yep.
That was the whole thing. So, yeah, I did do that. Yeah, some of the best memories and some of the best times of my life were about having a crew and having friends and, practicing and having our hearts broken when we got absolutely destroyed. At one point we were we were going talking about, New York. And look, we lived across the river from New York. But that body of water, which isn't too wide geographically speaking, I suppose, worlds of difference in the level of dancers. Holy cow. So you got somebody that comes over, goes through the bridge or tunnel, and you think that you're, hot stuff, and this guy starts dancing, hearts are breaking. You're done. Yeah, that was definitely a part of my experience, and dancing and doing that to Run DMC, which again comes back to why I'd love to chat with him.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, that would be great. He seems like a big personality. He seems like he would be a lot of fun to have on.
Yeah,
And
I had a chance to see him and Chuck D speak at the Rock Hall last year when they opened the hip hop wing in Cleveland. And, yeah, so many great stories and such an interesting life, growing up. Yeah.
yeah, that's amazing. It, do you have any other new projects on the horizon? Just the book that you're working on? Anything else?
Yeah, no, the book is, again, it's so all consuming. And it's, to be honest, it's a challenge to balance the podcast with doing that because even as I send out letters to try to get an agent, I'm still tweaking things on the book. I can get this a little bit better. I can get this a little tighter. So now, right now, the book and the podcast are primarily my focus. I do fantasize about writing something else one day if I get this
Get it done. Yeah,
book out of here.
I
Uh,
hear you.
but at the moment, that's and I'm happy to be able to do that. It's like we're talking about. It's great to have these outlets now and at this time in my life. Uh, yeah, no, I'll look for the next thing when I get that one done.
Yeah, I don't know if people realize how much work it is to podcast, especially if you're doing it
Oh,
right, because you want to do research and everything and preparing it, and then
yep,
working on it after it's done, and then
yep.
trying to work on your book at the same time, and then like I have my day job too, so yeah, I hear you with that balancing it all.
Yeah, you're
It's a
right.
lot.
Yeah, and look, and it's like a good news, bad news thing, I think. If you wanna have a podcast, there's kind of a low barrier to entry. You could literally, and I'm belonged to some of these groups like you were talking about earlier for books, and there's ones for podcasts where folks say, "Hey, I just started a podcast and I do it straight on my phone." That's all I do. I just talk into my phone and I publish that. I'm like, "Oh gosh." So it's easy to do. But that's the bad news too. It's easy to
Mhm.
do. So yeah, so folks, it's gonna be harder for people to find you and harder to find me because there's a lot of them out there. I don't know why I got on this tangent except to complain about that. Um,
But it seems like that in any creative space, especially even with music, you have a lot of people just putting out music, and it's hard for them how
yes, yeah.
to get
I guess
attention.
my thought was you said, people don't realize how hard it is. Yes, when done, like you said, when done right.
Probably,
Yeah. And it's
yeah,
only good if you do it right.
right, yeah.
Yeah, there's something like
Mhm.
200,000 new songs published every day.
Wow, wow, that's incredible. And yeah, and also with your podcast, it's not always interview, so you need to come up with other topics that you guys will cover and everything too. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's tricky. I don't know if you ran into this when you were doing the other show, but it's getting a little thinner to find current 80s stories or stories that are tied to the 1980s.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes there's a week where I'm like, there's just not enough, and it's not enough to sink our teeth into, and I don't wanna
Right.
just, publish it just to publish, so we'll skip this week, or I'll publish an interview I had already recorded. Um, so yeah, it's getting a little harder to find stories to keep doing this, in the format that I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Um,
Unfortunately, we're having more and more celebrity deaths and everything.
Gosh. Yeah, that too, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, when I first started the podcast, our first episode was on Journey, and then the second one was going to be on Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but then Prince died. So then we ended up pivoting and
Yeah,
we went to Prince. So yeah, we've had several episodes after celebrity death.
yeah, honestly, I can't do it. It bums me out so much.
Hmm.
I think the only celebrity that passed away that I talked about was Paul Rubens, and I didn't expect it, but his passing had moved me so much, I felt compelled to say something about it.
Hmm.
And I only realized later when I, read this book written by, an academic named Kate McKinney, who wrote about, Paul Rubens and Pee-wee's Playhouse, and I spoke to some other folks that I realized how much of an influence he was on me growing up, in the sense that the Pee-wee character, having an adult man pretend to be a child, playing with toys and doing ridiculous things, gave me the freedom to be. At the time, I felt like I could do whatever I want.
Hmm.
You got a grown man acting like this, I can be more like myself than I otherwise felt like I could. Um, so other than talking about him, and again, I didn't learn that till he passed away, sadly. I can't do those episodes. It just too bums me out too.
Yeah. Did the, did, is there a new documentary out about him?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yep.
haven't seen
Came out
that
a
yet.
couple months ago. Yeah.
Hmm.
I haven't watched either for the same reason. I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. All right. And then, all right, we can hop into our lightning round now. Oh, we can see where it takes us. Let's see. Who's your favorite 80s music artist?
Gosh, I'm gonna have to say the Beastie Boys, I suppose. Again, big fan of hip hop. And, I was a fan of theirs with their first album, License to Ill, but after, their next record, Paul's Boutique, came out, holy cow, I was sold. To me, in a sense, it was more hip hop than hip hop was hip hop at that point. See how many
Mhm.
times I can say hip hop. The, uh the first record was mostly drum machines, some electric guitars. It was very much in the sort of Def Jam sort of, formula, you know, produced by Rick Rubin, and so, it had a sound that was consistent with, folks at the time. it was different because of their punk rock background, so the
Right.
music itself and their energy was different than other hip hop artists at the time. But when Paul's Boutique came out, the way the Dust Brothers, who produced it, layered those samples together, holy cow, which just took music, I think, to another level. We had some other groups that did some similar things. I'm a big fan of Public Enemy as well. Uh, and consistently, I've continued to follow them and listen to their music, and I love their journey personally too. How they evolved from these guys who are sort of frat boys to led by MCA mostly, who sadly passed away a few years ago now. Um, help them grow as people, much like we're talking about here with Gen X Journeys. These guys said, you know what, we don't think that treating women or thinking of women in a certain misogynistic way that they did when they were younger is appropriate. And we're gonna let other folks know, and we're gonna do it through our music and through our, outreach, and they did, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, they totally evolved. I like that when bands are able to do that. It gives them some longevity too if they're able to do it
Mhm.
successfully. Let's see. All right, who's your '80s celebrity crush?
Gosh.
You can do more than one.
Gosh, I gotta tell you, this is not '80s, I guess I'd have to bring it to the '80s, but my earliest crush was, Yvonne Craig in, 1966 Batman, which we
Yeah.
saw, reruns in the 1970s. So that's probably my earliest crush. In the 1980s, gosh, it could have been a ton of people, honestly. Person that I probably the person that comes to mind, though, is Winona Ryder, who's someone we weren't familiar with until later in the decade, but, I remember as a young artist and aspiring actor, I thought, "Oh, I wanna work with her one day." So and boy, she didn't disappoint, she had some troubles later in life, and,
Right.
talking about Stranger Things, she came back, it was so perfect that they had her in it as a connection to the '80s, and she's just a fantastic performer, and I think very charming, and, yeah, she was, one of my '80s crushes, certainly. Diane Franklin was too.
Oh
We
yeah.
talked about
Yep.
that.
Yep.
She was probably that's the beginning of the 1980s, but holy cow, I couldn't get past what she was it Rick? She totally it was Rick with the guy she went with, as I remember. Boy, that
Yeah.
that
Rick was the one that she was staying with.
yeah, she was
Uh,
staying with Rick. What's,
yeah.
oh gosh, can't remember his name now.
Lane. Was it?
Huh.
You talking about John Cusack? Lane? Is it
No, no,
Lane?
no,
Oh.
and I'm sorry, you're right. In Last American Virgin, so she
Okay.
she stays with Rick, and
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
oh
going
my
better off
gosh, but
that.
she
Yeah,
was so
yeah.
beautiful, so charming.
Hmm.
Yeah, there you go, there's 2. There's
Yeah.
3, actually.
You're right. Yep. uh, let me see.
I could go on too with crushes. Now it's the whole thing's opened up. Now we start thinking about MTV and music videos, and you see just can you have a crush on someone who doesn't even talk?
Yeah, all those models and stuff that were in all
Yes,
the hair band
right.
videos and stuff.
Can you
Yeah,
have a crush on someone you don't know the name of them? Huh.
yeah. Like I like the one that was in Poison's Fallen Angel video.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I like that. That's a good topic. It's something to do research on. Where are they now? Yeah. Let's see. What kind of television did you watch back then?
Gosh,
Did
you
you
mean
have
the
any
actual set or you mean the shows?
the shows, TV shows?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any favorites?
Gosh, so many. I guess, a mix of things, but, the things that come to mind are the ones where you had, heroes, so I'm thinking about Knight Rider, was a huge fan of Knight Rider, the A-Team, because you had these folks who were, they weren't members of the government, they weren't actually, policemen, they weren't detectives, they were just citizens, and well, A-Team was AWOL, I think,
Right.
sitting in a
Yeah.
military prison or something like that, but out of the goodness of their heart, they would go around and, do things. And I was drawn to a lot of shows like that. Greatest American Hero, another example. And I guess that sort of almost sort of leans towards sci-fi and or adventure, I suppose, were my favorite types of shows. Later in the decade, more comedies were popular than earlier in the decade. So
Yeah.
then it became must see TV, and I was a big fan of Family Ties and Cheers and those shows. But earlier in the decade, it was those, people on an adventure trying to do good. The Dukes of Hazzard, there's another
Right.
example. It started in the late 1970s.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
heroes.
Yeah, that's one big thing I miss too is the TV theme songs. You don't really get
Oh,
that these days. Yeah, especially you be it into music and everything. Yeah, you
yeah.
uh,
Some shows today don't even have a. They barely have credits. It's just
right.
like a stinger with the title, and then it starts.
Yeah, yeah. Or if
Uh,
there is a song, it's boring to me
yeah,
anyway.
you're right. Yeah, if I said to you, sing the theme song for whatever popular show, I have no idea. Or there's no lyrics. You can't even glom
Right.
onto. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
right. They're not gonna be on the radio. You're right.
Right.
That's '80s was probably the last time we had theme songs that were also top
Definitely.
40 hits.
Yep, yep. Yeah, maybe like Friends was the last one.
Yeah,
That
that's a
so,
good point.
but I mean that was that was basically early 90s when that came out. So, yeah. But you're right with the Greatest American Hero. Even some of the Miami Vice, they had even the instrumentals, Hill Street Blues. Yes, even those were making top 40 radio at the time. Yeah, so interesting. And I always felt like the music was a character. The opening songs were basically a character of the show for me too. You'd look forward to that.
Yeah, I agree, and, now we can, skip through things,
Hmm.
which we couldn't do
Right.
in the 1980s, but if we could, I don't think you would skip through some of those themes,
Hmm.
because they put you in the mood, and they were fantastic all by themselves. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I mean, I could see a little bit because there's more commercials now, so they have less time, so they cut out the music. But with streaming, I don't think they don't have to fit in a particular time slot. So,
That's true.
yeah,
Yeah, and
I
it's like there's like a handful of people like Mike Post that wrote like
mm,
most of those themes.
yep.
He's actually a guy I would love to talk to too that I haven't been able to get a hold of, or maybe they did come back and say no, that he doesn't do interviews. That's possible too.
That's probably, yeah. I don't think I've ever heard him on an interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that would be good. Yeah, so many. Yeah. All right. So, you want to tell people where they could find you?
Yeah. Hey, just wherever you find GenX Journeys, I'm sure you could also find us on all the podcast platforms, YouTube. We've got a Facebook page, a website, all that, and it's the name is 1980s Now because like you mentioned, it's trying to connect to the decade of our favorite decade for pop culture. I think the most influential, really, certainly, and I argue often that it's more influential than I think the Renaissance. The 15th, 16th, 17th century Renaissance. What took hundreds of years to birth all this different culture and science, and we did it in 10. But we also connect that to what's still happening to us today, either personally or in media like Stranger Things, something that's got a foot in both worlds. And that's where we get the title from, 1980s Now.
You'll love it. Yeah, it's an incredible show. I highly recommend it. And I'll also put links in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
Oh, and then also with your book, is there well, including Amazon, is there a website they can go to check out your
Yeah,
book?
if you want to avoid Amazon because of the monster that they've become, my favorite place to buy books generally is bookshop.org. I make no money from bookshop.org. I guess I make pennies from if you buy the book, like literally pennies. But bookshop.org is so cool. I learned about them during the pandemic. They're an organization that it functions like Amazon. The way the website works, it's as easy to buy from them, but
Hmm.
they take a percentage of the profits of every book sold and they put it in a pool that they use to support the various local mom and pop bookstores that are part of their organization. So, it helps balance out things. You may have a small store in a town that doesn't buy that many books. They get a little bit of this money to help them pay the rent and stay open because it's so important to have books. You're going to need a place to sell your books. I need a place to sell mine. Bookshop.org. That sounds like I work for them. I don't.
Oh, I love that. Oh, yeah. Finding an alternative to Amazon. That's great in my book. Yeah. Can help out local bookshops as opposed to filling that guy's pockets.
Yeah, right. Having him send some another pop star to space. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah. Oh, we can go on a whole other tangent with that. All those little tax credits and everything. All right. I've learned box breathing. So
Oh, yeah, hey.
That's good for us Gen Xers too.
Yeah.
Mental health. That's a good entry is box breathing. So we need that these days, dealing with these boomers and millennials. We
I
kind of
know.
get
Get out the
skipped.
way, boomers. Talking about not having Gen Xers in positions of power. Get
Yeah.
out of the way.
Yeah. So yeah, I just want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and I love your show, love your books. I wish you the best of luck. Yeah, thank you so much.
Likewise. Likewise, Paul. It's been an absolute delight chatting with you. Good luck on your look. You got a lot of marathons to run.
Yeah,
Good luck. I admire how healthy you must be to be able to do that because as a Gen Xer, I do get winded. My wife can attest to this. Going up a flight of stairs, I get to the top and she's like, "Are you okay?" So I admire that, and keep at it. And I look forward to reading your book when it's ready too.
thank you. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. The running is a struggle for me, but but I just keep plowing away and try to give other people hope if I can do it.
One
Anyone
step
can
at a
do it.
time. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Can't just jump right into it. So yeah, exactly. One step at a time. You guys can do it. All right. Well, see you next time, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. And remember,
be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes!
sit, Lizzie, sit. Good dog.